Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, coming to you live from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Joined today by my little youngin' here, Carly, who wanted to say hello to everybody.
Hi, gang.
Okay, great. So, an appropriate time for Carly to be here joining me because today's question comes from Melissa. And Melissa sends in the question, what skills or behavior patterns should you teach your foals, weanlings, or yearlings? A friend of mine who has animal rescue experience, but not necessarily horse experience, is going to be fostering some weanlings for the SPCA. So, when I think about working with our young horses, what I want to think about is, kind of, I guess I would say it's kind of a warning. I've had a lot of young horses come to me through the past. Many of you know that, for years, my primary business was starting young horses under saddle. I've started several thousand horses under saddle now. And some of the most challenging ones to work with, I would say, are the ones that were overstimulated or over handled as young horses. So when it comes to our foals, our weanlings, our yearlings, I think about very basic patterns that I want them to learn, very basic skills that I want them to learn. I want them to generally be friendly with humans, with people, with us, but maybe not necessarily over friendly, right? So a good scratch on the forehead, a good scratch around the body generally is pretty good. I want to make sure that they can lead, right? That we can bring them from the stall to the paddock, or if they happen to live outside with mom or with the herd, that they can be led from one paddock to another. That's a pretty good skill to have. Tying, general tying, in a very general sense, a very loose tying. I consider it to be mock tying, where I don't even secure the lead rope in a knot fashion, but maybe just kind of wrap it around so the horses get confident standing fairly still in one place. Maybe it's just long enough for them to eat their meals or something like that if they're being grain fed. That's generally enough for a young horse. As an emergency skill, I like to have our young horses learning and confident with loading into a trailer and unloading. That's something that, of course, none of us can ever plan for the emergencies that happen with our horses, but that's a really good skill for your young horse to have in case of an emergency like that. So I guess the other skill then within all of that is basic haltering. I want to make sure that the young horse is fairly confident with haltering, lowering the head, kind of accepting the halter there and being somewhat patient while we're putting the halter on. Other than that, I don't look for a whole lot of skills from our young horses. And I know that there are a lot of folks out there that want their young horses, their yearlings, their weanlings, to be doing a lot of different things. What I've seen a lot in the past from, like I said, several thousand young horses that I've started under saddle now, is that the ones that had the most exposure, as far as maybe I should say desensitization, those ones tended to be the most difficult horses to start under saddle. So when I'm looking at young horses, when I'm working with young horses, I'm thinking of them for the long term. I'm thinking of how they're going to be as a riding horse. So what generally happens with these young horses that have been overstimulated, and we've seen plenty of young horses, weanlings, yearlings, that have, had tarps thrown on them, had, bags full of cans thrown around them, things like that. Basically, what they're being taught all their life is everything means nothing. And then we put the saddle on, and now we're changing the plan. Now we say to those young horses, oh, this means something. But we've spent potentially 2, 3 years maybe telling them that everything means nothing. What we find with those horses tend to take that a little bit personal, because now 2 or 3 years into this process, we've changed the rules. And they're apt to say, hey, you lied to me. You told me everything was okay. I didn't need to really respond to anything. And now you're saying I need to respond to something? So I find oftentimes that those horses tend to be quicker to buck, quicker to resist, quicker to sulk back against the rider's legs. So I'm a little bit of a minimalist when it comes to working with my young horses. I want them to be friendly with people, of course. I want them to look for us, to look forward to us being around, but not in such a way that they become dull or over desensitized to basic handling. I want to make sure that if I ask them to do something, if I ask them to yield, if I ask them to lead, or if I provide some sort of stimulation, that it actually means something to them. That's pretty important when it comes to the riding career of that horse. I can remember a story years ago. I was asked by a client of mine. He called me and he said, and I'd started several young horses under saddle for him. He said, you know, I just got this horse. I forget what it was. It was maybe a quarter horse or a thoroughbred. He said, I just got this horse. He's 4 months old. I just bought him. He's not yet weaned. He says, what would you like me to do before sending him to you as a 2-year-old to start under saddle? And I said, kick him out in the pasture once he's weaned from his mom, pet him on the forehead once a week, and otherwise leave him alone. Because what I find is that it's easier as a trainer. It was easier at that point to teach one to lead, basically halter break them, than it was to teach one to become sensitive again once they've been totally desensitized to the person or to, you know, all of the stimulus that people tend to put on to sometimes a young horse. So yeah, and actually that same fella, he sent me that horse 2 years later, and he was fantastic. He said, yeah, I followed your advice, scratched him on the head once a week, picked up his feet every now and then. He, you know, had his experience with the farrier, and otherwise I kind of left him be out there and be a horse, right? That's an important thing, allowing your horse to be a horse until and even through the time when we're riding them. That's pretty important too, but especially up until that time when we ask them to become riding horses, because as horses it's important for them to learn how to be horses. It's important for them to have that socialization out there with the herd if possible, or with, you know, 1 or 2 other horses if that's the minimum that they have, but ideally they would have a herd out there to be with. They grow up best that way, I find. So Melissa, hopefully this has been helpful to you. So kind of, again, just to wrap up, I'm very much a minimalist. I want them to be able to lead. I want them to be able to pretend tie. And that's not even a requirement to me, honestly, because that's easy enough to teach afterwards. I would like them to be able to load in the trailer, or at least be comfortable following another horse in the trailer, and that's just for emergency purposes there. So want you to think about that. So again, hopefully, Melissa, that's been helpful to you and to anybody else out there that has a young horse that you are bringing up in preparation for it being your next riding prospect. So let's see, question of the day for us here. Question of the day. Do you have a young horse? What are some of the skills that you would like your young horse to understand or to be able to accomplish in their young formative years? Okay, we're not quite ready to ride them yet. We're talking foals, weanlings, yearlings. What are some of the things you'd like those horses to be able to accomplish? I'm really looking forward to reading your answers in the comment section below here. If you feel like this advice has been helpful to you, please give us a thumbs up and a comment below. If maybe you have a friend that would need this advice, please feel free, tag them in the comment section below or share this video directly with them. And don't forget, gang, you keep sending in your questions and I'll keep talking about horses. Thanks so much.